So welcome to Profile 3 TV, and today we're joined by Jude Franks. So Jude, thank you very much for taking time out to talk to us, and you're a marketing and tourism consultant.
I am. Thank you very much. It's lovely to speak to you today.
Excellent. You'd mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, sure. Well, I've been involved in the tourism industry for probably longer than I'd like to admit, actually, but 35 years. Predominantly here in Australia and in Tasmania, which is my native home. So over that period of time, I've worked with a lot of new projects, mentored a lot of smaller businesses. I've also been involved in ecotourism, both here and also in the capacity as the Director of the Ecotourism Australia. And I've also been involved in heritage and cultural tourism. On the board of Port Arthur Historic Sites here in Tasmania, which is one of the World Heritage listed through the Convict serial listing. So apart from that, I have a passion for making a difference, particularly in obviously my home state, but I've also worked extensively throughout the rest of Australia and in product development and experience development. In Southeast Asia for a period of time doing country branding with an organisation called Future Brand. Mm-hmm. So I guess a fairly diverse background from all ends of the spectrum, both large and small, and I'm still very passionate and making a difference, hopefully, in that area.
Incredible, and changing economies as you're working through them, which is even better. So do you mind, and I'm going to touch on actually every one of those hopefully as we chat, but do you mind just explaining a little bit more of the services then you offer? So you partner with organisations who are hoping to grow their local tourism?
Yeah, I guess in the past it's been a really eclectic mix of connection that I have. You know, I've worked from everything from just being a sole consultant working with a particular product or area or region, but I've also built teams and worked as a member of a team, and also worked in senior executive roles to do that. One of my roles, which ended up being a really market-shaping era for our state of Tasmania, was with a group called the Federal Group, who were really going through understanding and I suppose creating on the ground experiential tourism and the understanding of how you connected to people through that. So, as I said, I sit on a number of boards. I'm involved at the board table, but also working as an executive member of delivering a project here at the moment in Tasmania, which is the Mount Wellington cable car, which is another era for our industry. So I guess the services I do, I'm happy to. I often do just some mentoring, which isn't part of a paid consulting, because I'm very passionate about making a difference. I build teams. It might be a project that I choose to get involved in. So it's quite eclectic. I also work, for example, with a very, very highly regarded architectural company here in Tasmania, but also who work throughout Australia and elsewhere in ecotourism and in actually specialising in the light on the ground solution. So I guess if that's a funny roundabout way to say that it's quite a broad managerial through to marketing, through to brand involvement.
Amazing, incredible. And you mentioned ecotourism a few times, so it's something that we hear definitely more and more now. You wouldn't mind explaining what ecotourism is to yourself, and why is it becoming so popular, I guess?
Well, I guess the concept of eco and nature-based tourism has always been something that was almost super niche previously. And the way that I see it, I think it's very important for us to understand that allowing a greater and deeper understanding of areas that are pressure or the natural attributes of a place, and allowing sensible and sustainable involvement in those places to allow people to both better understand the ecology, the ecosystems, but also to experience the benefits and really understand that these are the attributes we need to protect across the whole board. So I guess I don't know that it's not. I think our awareness of this is really around the fact that people are now drawn to being immersed in authentic experiences and to being able to access areas that previously were only for those that were really prepared to really make the effort. And I think we should still continue to make it so that it isn't just a mass market experience. So from my point of view, I think it's all about understanding what quadruple bottom line means and how that tourism and those kind of developments can benefit places across their own for the social benefit, for the economic benefit, and also in a sustainable way to understand how culturally these stories can be told.
Incredible. And then as tourists going to locations, then we can actually, we impact this as well.
Well, yeah, I think understanding how that can happen in that supported and sustainable way is the issue. I guess what we hear a lot of the time is the push and pull on killing the golden goose. And I think it is very important to ensure that we manage that balance in a way that we do preserve the actual essential attributes and fabric of our precious places, and ensure that whatever happens is about light on the ground solutions that do benefit communities.
I totally understand. And you think, obviously, Tasmania and Australia is steeped in culture. So culture tourism then is massive, I guess, for yourselves?
Yes, well, I guess from our perspective, understanding how we look to interpreting obviously the indigenous stories, or the custodians of the land and I guess that's becoming something that we're making sure that we respect that in everything we're doing in every area. But culturally, I guess we're now starting to come to the point, and in our relative infancy, when we talk about Ireland and the post-millennium, etc., but our links back to other countries and the fact that we are such a melting pot of all kinds of people from other places. And we're now starting to really understand and celebrate convictism as one of the foundations, that we need not be ashamed of the roots of how European settlement took place here. With my involvement with Port Arthur, obviously that was one of the better known penal settlements here in Australia, particularly, when that became part of the convict serial listing for World Heritage status. That obviously changed the way we started, and it also aligned with our community starting to be less embarrassed about having convict heritage. So that's something. Cultural tourism, I think, it's really the essence of the personality of a place, and having the ability for us to understand better how we interpret and engage with that, and that it's not just a one fit, that it can actually be a range of eclectic celebrations of cultural identity. And with the communities that we now have, which are melting pot, as I said, from people from all over the world, we're now really celebrating that.
Incredible.
Here in Tasmania as well, we have Mona. Mona is the Museum of Old and New Art, which opened some years ago. Through that, we now have a range of celebrations of that very eclectic modern art era, interspersed with this the whole as we were, I suppose. So that's very much about taking us into an era of festivals and events that happen in the middle of winter that bring people to our state and take the locals out of their homes. It's become a different way of thinking, and we celebrate those cultural identities as a result. And it's part of the driver of destination attraction as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, totally. It's incredible. And actually, Ireland, we've lived off the cultural emigration and the connection with people around the world. And I can imagine, again, as you say, the history of how Australia was founded. There'll be people who would find that maybe some of the relatives have went to Australia, so that having that link, even though we're over here, is incredible. And even Ireland, here in Northern Ireland, we're starting to come to terms with our own troubled past, and actually people are coming to see how the city and the country, I guess, is rebuilding. So it's something, I guess, we're on a parallel journey there, which is really interesting. But not to forget or not to dishonor the past in any way or form as well. So very important. And it's really interesting. You're talking about seasonality. So your seasons are slightly different to ours. So obviously we're in winter now, and you're in summer. But you obviously you're trying to drive tourism then in the off-peak seasons.
Yes, I think our biggest issue, I suppose, in many parts of the world, and we certainly have suffered from it as a result, our winters are far milder than yours, of course. But we have been looking to understand how we strengthen the shoulder seasons here in Tasmania, because obviously it used to be, last one out after Easter, turn the light out on your way out the door. So now I think as a result of looking and understanding where the opportunities are to attract people who aren't just going to come when the temperature's between a certain, between 22 degrees and 25 degrees or thereabouts. But so the festivals and events have certainly been a really big part of helping to deliver that. It creates a new audience of people that are wanting to come, and also really telling it is a mild winter. We're mostly still in double digits for most of the daytime hours. So we've always we've always apologised for our cold.
I'm raging.
For our cold, but in the scheme of things, you're still really able to enjoy all of the wonderful natural and cultural assets that we have to experience. So I think it's been us as much as anyone really coming to terms with that, and getting the Tasmanians and the people from other parts to come down. And Tasmania is really now a really hip and groovy place, it's seen as from outside, to come to, and it is. It's a great place to live, but it's an amazing place to visit. And I think with the development of Mona, it filled that little last gap of something that we really didn't deliver. But still parts of Tasmania, there's absolutely no doubt. I sit on the board of RACT, which is our motoring organisation, and we actually own and operate properties in 3 of the iconic destinations in Tasmania. That's Strahan on the west coast of Tasmania, Cradle Mountain, which is in sort of the Central Highlands, and Freycinet on Tasmania's east coast. And we do find that whilst we can still get all of the people here for the events into Hobart, etc., that regional dispersal is still a significant issue, getting people out of the key centre. So we've got to work on that, and it's all going to be driven through experience development. That's the trigger that's going to create that, and it is going to address our seasonality. So
amazing.
And making sure that the airlines continue to keep some metal flying in, because obviously they're driven by their yield. So
yeah. Excellent. And you're talking about yield then, and I know obviously sitting on boards and yield, and you'll be looking at a lot of numbers that maybe a lot of people involved in tourism wouldn't be privy to or wouldn't even be thinking of. But you would have a view that yield maybe is better than volume of tourism, or what is the view in that?
Look, I think it's really hard when you're in a place that really does need almost to make hay through the seasonality. You need to make hay whilst the sun shines to a degree. So the temptation to be driven by numbers and to have that as a is certainly there. However, I think we are starting to understand what the true meaning of a visitor economy that actually is more flourishing, more sustainable, and it isn't around just mass tourism and numbers. We hear all around the world about really understanding what profitless volume is in this space, and we're also a very topical issue that I think is happening globally, that we're starting to look at in some areas, is about carrying capacity and understanding. I wouldn't say that we're at the point here in Tasmania that we're really talking about over tourism, but I think we are the masters of our destiny as it relates to how we choose to truly manage the higher yielding visitor, someone who's going to come and engage with us, who's going to stay longer, and or have a very high yielding experience that really does benefit all of all of our target areas that we need to look at. So yeah, I think I'm certainly, having been involved in startups of new experiences and sitting as part of teams as we actually go through the agony of looking at the business case and working out what is actually going to be profitable. It is very much about a sustainable solution that is more about yield than just numbers. I think if we start to continue to look at numbers, numbers are easy. You can discount and actually compromise, I suppose, the actual whole integrity of your business and go for just mass market. But that's certainly not where I think we should be, and nor with most of the places that I've actually worked with, unless I don't think it's the recipe for success.
No, very, very interesting. Again, we've an example over here in the UK. We had Cornwall last year, so Cornwall would be very, very famous, beaches, beautiful area in England, and I'm not sure what happened last year. The sun was out, and just it was like a number of things happened, and it seemed like half of England decided to go to Cornwall on the coast, and the actual local tourist agencies had to put out a plea asking people not to visit, to not come. They couldn't cope. The roads are blocked, the traffic jams, everything. Absolute, I guess, PR disaster for the area, even the locals. And that's, again, I guess, the local communities were actually hoping that people would stop coming because they actually couldn't go around their daily life, which is obviously the impact for volume is overtaking the quality aspect of tourism.
Yeah, and I really think that's a really important thing that we need to be understanding, is that when we're just not talking about profitability here. We're actually talking about allowing, from this whole quadruple bottom line thinking, it's about ensuring that the quality of life for people who live and need to go about their daily lives, which is one of the attractors to places for people to want to engage with. And if we look at some of the examples around the world of places where the locals have really had enough. And we need to make, this change needs to come from the very top of our governments and policies that need to be established, and not with I think it needs to be understood all the way from the top to the bottom that this isn't about an anti-tourist kind of mentality. It's just about making sure that we protect every aspect of that mix, which is about protecting our quality of life, our social fabric, and also protecting our cultural identity as part of that. And also, as a result, the visitor experience does suffer if we start to look just at mass market. It's not what we want people to experience.
Totally, and as you say, there's so many examples of this all around the world that where it goes wrong, it turns into a nightmare, and it would put, I guess, a lot of people off visiting. So definitely something to be aware of.
I think if we look, and I know, looking and reflecting back on the changes we've had in the industry and going forward, if the indicators are and everything continues as we're looking at significant increased growth in tourism globally. And as such, what we have now isn't just a little transient part of what we're going to experience. So I think we really do need to be very serious about putting into play some measures that are going to protect that. Some countries are doing it, but I think we need to do it before the locals are out there with their banners and wandering the street saying, go away.
Yeah, which is we've lost it at that point. But amazing, and over here we'd see a lot. So we're very lucky. We had a lot of screen tourism success in the last couple of years, and we've things like Game of Thrones, which has attracted so many people. Incredible, and we have one of the scenes, which is trees, just a little bit north of here, a lane with trees bunched over, and there was so much traffic on that road that actually the trees were getting damaged. So again, I would go down. It was funny. You go down on a Sunday morning at 8 a.m. It'd be empty, but if you went down any time during the week, it'd just be coaches after coaches after coaches, everyone out, hundreds of people on the road getting photos and back on the bus. So back to the experience, it is very tough to try and cope with the demand and the local environment as well. But very, very interesting.
Yeah, I think you've hit on a really good one there, because I think there are some places that have benefited enormously from film tourism. The domino and multiplier effect of that has been shown to be absolutely incredible.
Isn't it?
And given now that people that can travel very easily, most places are extremely accessible and affordable. So it is very easy to do that. So understanding how that's balanced is going to be a real issue for us going forward.
Totally, and the thing with the film or screen tourism, you just never know. You're delighted to get a movie or TV show come in, but you just never know how big it might be. And by the time you realise it's too late, the plane tickets are booked. But not that anyone's complaining yet. But it's amazing. So
Actually, interestingly, I have a friend who's just about to make a couple of big screen movies out of Tasmania, and I think it's pretty clearly understood that one of the areas that it's going to be filmed, they will see an extraordinary benefit. And I guess the question will be, are they ready for it? Because low season, then they'd like to say yes we are, but I don't. It might be a bit like a Cornwall at times.
yeah, and that's it exactly, getting the balance. So amazing. So that's another problem we're going to have to deal with now. The next, well, a good problem though, isn't it? It's a good problem. We're talking about, or mentioned, I guess Asia, and we've a massive increase in tourism here, and I wanted to ask you about branding of countries as well. But I know you'd mentioned you'd actually done a little bit of work around Asia, or you've been.
Yeah, I did. I ended up after I've always been passionate about brand. Brand is basically everything, as far as from my perspective. And I think we now do understand that's really what it's all about in creating appeal. And the biggest challenge, I suppose, is delivering on that brand experience and promise. So I was working for a company who actually had helped to work on the Pure Tasmania brand here in Tasmania, which had been through my era with the federal group. That was a much awarded brand. It was around experiences and changing the whole way that you delivered people into life-altering experiences. So it wasn't about, here's the room, look at the room. It was very much around, these are all the amazing things that you can do, and this is how it's going to make you feel. If you make the effort, this is going to be the reward for making the effort. Mm-hmm. And it was a very emotive brand. So I worked with an organisation called Future Brand based in Singapore. They're a global organisation, part of the World Group. And what my role was there for that period of time, I was actually living in Jakarta and working out of Singapore and Jakarta, but working predominantly on leading their tourism practice and their country branding practice in the region. One of the roles that I had as well was leading the Country Brand Index, which was it had been going for a decade, that done with BBC in London, actually. It surveyed about 118 different countries and rated them against a range of different dimensions, which also showed what were the things that really impacted on people's, I suppose, an appeal of a destination, a reason that they would want to travel there, but also a range of other business factors and what would attract them to live there. So there's absolutely no doubt in country branding and understanding the authenticity and the differentiation that you need to achieve to really get this cut through is probably the most significant and most important thing that should drive every piece of any kind of communication that a country uses. And it should be owned by the people from within those areas, and they should understand and be custodians and be absolutely engaged with that. It takes me back to the heyday of Ireland, when the huge changes were made there, and I had the pleasure of having quite a bit to do with Matt McNulty, who had been the Director General of the board, Failté. I can't say, is that the correct way to pronounce it?
You're going to murder me with my pronunciation as well. I'd be kicked out.
Matt came out to Tasmania and spoke to us at a time when we were really suffering as an industry. We'd had a pilots dispute here. We'd had a number of things that it really affected. And I mean, I think he was responsible in his decade in that role of a 300% increase in numbers. But it was all based around everybody had to buy into the brand. That was the mechanism that was used to take this. And I think for me, it's the single most important thing that people need to understand, that should assist to inform product development, communication, the way that the industry think and talk about themselves, the way the people that live there think and talk about themselves, and align with.
Amazing, excellent.
So while I was in Singapore, and we worked with a number of countries, and for example, Singapore itself, their country brand index showed that they dropped down a little bit in the area of heritage and culture in terms of their identity. So they immediately acted and implemented an education program in the schools, an alumni program, a building and monument strategy that allowed them to make sure that they could actually address that part.
Wow.
They understand that they weren't differentiated, that everybody around the region had a golf course to show. So
amazing.
it was
Amazing, excellent, and yeah. So my dodgy Irish will be. So we're talking about Fáilte, Ireland. So I think it's So welcome to Ireland. Yeah. So I've recovered. But no, again, very very interesting. And when we talk about, again, I know you get this better than anyone. You're looking at the small businesses who are in tourism, then through to the country tourism, which is incredible. Just to think of the level and the difference between them and the impact it can have on the local people. So quite incredible. So and your connection.
Country to country, though, I'd say that, coming back to the point about brand, and I think understanding that, differentiating, being proud and clear enough on that is the defining factor often in establishing and resonating and creating appeal for potential visitors, and also for attracting people to come and live and work in the countries as well.
Of course, and that's another thing. Another challenge is getting the people to work in the industry, the right people with the right skills as well. So very very interesting. So much to consider. It's incredible. What an industry. And there's another connection then, I guess, with Australian and Irish sculpture. If I'm right, or is there a story there you can tell us?
Yes, well, I guess although I haven't been completely involved in the fundraising program of this, we've just recently had Rowan Gillespie, who's one of the most amazing sculptors, I think, in the world, who's obviously based in Ireland. Does incredible bronze statues from renders, and he has just I think it was in 2017, we actually had the Irish president. Oh. Came out to launch these statues and reveal them. So the idea was that these are statues called Footsteps to Freedom. They're a story of where the actual convicts, particularly those from obviously the UK, arrived in Sullivan's Cove in Hobart, and where they disembarked from their boats, and they were marched up to particularly the female convicts, marched up to the female factory, which was at the other end of town. So this joined a trilogy of installations that Rowan has done. One's about the famine in Dublin. Yeah. The other one is actually the migrants in Toronto, and then this completed the trilogy. But he was just here last week, and it's been announced that he's actually going to do another series which relates to the children that were the orphans and the children that were associated, and another one on women. He's so captivated with this story that he normally doesn't do this, but we're very, very fortunate to have that amazing connection. Yeah. So we're actually looking, at the moment there's a fundraising program to try and actually fundraise for that next range, and one of those we're hoping will be at the female factory in South Hobart, which is one of the World Heritage convict listed sites that's operated by Port Arthur Historic Sites that I sit on the board of.
Incredible. No one I've seen his work as many or any most people who've went through Dublin would have. So incredible, so amazing, and I'm very jealous now. So I need to plan another trip to Dublin, I think, to have a little walk around the statues.
Dublin, come to Tasmania.
Even better. And I know you're heavily involved in helping businesses, I guess, develop their experiences and that. But you've probably seen common mistakes that the businesses makes when it comes to project management or planning out what they're going to do? Is there any tips or advice you could share around that, or common ones you've seen?
Yeah, well, this is something I get really excited about becoming involved in new thoughts and new concepts. I suppose I think that way, and having been involved in many that, and I'm fortunate to say that I think most have been extremely successful. It's great to see them continue to grow in an environment that's more flourishing as well. But I think the major thing that a lot of people just continue to get wrong is not understanding the market, and they have a passionate idea and that they think that that's something that is going to actually progress, but there needs to be a rigor around some of the base understanding of matching markets and in developing, I suppose, particularly with project management, making sure that you've got the right skills involved in the table. So you know your information. You've really looked at the business case from the point of view of really understanding if there's an opportunity for this. You've understand a timeline. And one thing that I think people do often leave out of the whole paradigm of understanding is knowing who your stakeholders are. So it's not just necessarily the customers. There are a range of both regional and national and international stakeholders that you need to be ensuring that you bring to the table. So I think it's probably doing that little bit of the rest of the work at the front end, that to understand what you really need and being really harsh about it then, rather than actually getting disheartened down the track. But I think generally speaking, those issues can be identified pretty clearly if you understand the market, and maybe making sure that you get the right people involved then, rather than allowing the passion to dictate or determine.
Incredible, because you're right. You can be a little bit too passionate about your little baby or project, and nothing will stop you getting that to the market. But actually, sometimes it does need a little bit of a dose of reality. And I've been there, and I've not listened and not seen the signs around me. And you do pay for it, because a little bit of reality at the start can save a lot of pain down the road. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and it's not only just a negative critique; it's actually really just getting some informed and people that are experts to just cast their eye over, and not feeling as if it's. I think people get very protective, and they're concerned that that's going to compromise from the point of view of it's going to mean that they're seen as being not quite having all the skills to do something. But in fact, it's much better to build a team at the front end and ensure that you've got all of those aspects covered.
No, totally, and that's probably one of the benefits that from yourself. You've worked in so many industries, especially around tourism and different sizes of business. So you've picked up a lot of skills, and you've seen a lot of things happen that maybe you can identify things before they become a catastrophe or not.
Yeah, I think somebody asked me the other day. Only I was having a chat at a ladies leaders group, and they asked me what I'd say had meant that I'd been relatively successful. I don't think of myself in that way. I think of myself as being a bit of a connector and joining the dots and making sure that I can add value in those areas. But I thought it was maybe because strategically I see things a little bit differently. And whilst I'm a marketer, probably a natural marketer more than anything, I also come from a very strong business background, which means that the concept of interweaving brand and appeals also comes down with really understanding in a very smart way what strategically you need to do to achieve an outcome. And that's probably the major difference that I'd say. And whether that can apply whether you've got a one-person operation that's starting out from a very boutique sense, right through to talking to a country. Sometimes it is just breaking down some of the very basic concepts. I had one experience in my time in Asia where I literally did tear out pictures from an airline magazine on my way over and walk into a country and show them, cover the names of the ads that had been taken, and showed them these. And I said, who's this, who's this, who's this, who's this? And they were, as I mentioned before, there were 4 golf courses. I said, really, you might just have wasted. You just should save your money and start to do some research, think about the concept, product development is going to create this trigger for you. And it was as simple as that. And they sort of looked at me as if to say, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's that easy or that obvious. If only it was easy.
Simplifying it a smidge,
Yeah.
but you know.
No, exactly. No, that's it. And actually, that's probably the hardest thing to do of all the things to do. So you've obviously worked in the tourism industry for quite a while. I guess mentoring and consulting and leading projects. So you've probably seen a lot of change. So what's been the I guess the biggest change you've seen, and what have you seen? Tell me what it was like back in the day. So we again ourselves, we'd have clients come in now today who'd be new young clients starting out on their journey in tourism, offering services or experience here in Northern Ireland, and we'd be trying to guide them. So any advice or tips or stories you could tell us would be great.
Well, I guess we've probably come through the greatest era of change with from a technology perspective. That's certainly been the most enormous change that we've had in my time in the industry. Going from the point of view that any kind of immediate, I was state manager of a hotel group here in Tasmania at one stage, and our franchise operators had to have a telex machine, because that was considered to be cutting edge, IT. So if we think now about just using technology or the internet and the connectivity that provides for us, but what it's done for the industry has been just a quantum leap into a whole different era, and I guess one where not only does it provide our opportunity for us to have our information out, to make sure that we connect, that reservation systems, everything's immediate. But it also has put the power into the customer. The customer has the power when it comes to researching and actually obtaining their information on their experiences. But it's also their booking. There's nowhere to hide either, because you have to deliver on your brand promise. Otherwise, somebody's going to tell somebody else that happens, and it happens very immediately.
Yeah.
So I think, notwithstanding the fact of the technology around airline travel and the actual volume of increase in that, I suppose our understanding, and whilst I don't think we're responding quite as quickly as we should on climate change, I think that something that we need going forward is going to be one of our biggest challenges, to understand how we look at moving volume numbers at the growth that probably is going to be double again. But certainly, yeah, I think the internet and technology generally has been without question. And I suppose the fact that people they're seeking a range of different experiences. It's not in all markets, but they want something that is going to immerse them into a life-altering experience. They travel for a range of more, I suppose, deeper meaning, transformational holidays or experiences, rather than just gratuitous. It doesn't mean to say that a decent, a decent resort holiday isn't
it doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're just changing in the way we think about the way we want. I think that's going to be one of our changes going forward, that we're going to see people are going to be, and they're going to be driven by destinations who that we're seeing these trends at the moment, who are starting to crack down and make changes on the way that they manage numbers and their carrying capacity. So, yeah.
Yeah, scary when you think of. You're right though. You can go anywhere now in a short flight. The technology. I remember back in the day sending my numbers at night through fax. So that was it. Not that well. It was a wee while ago. The iPhone's 10 or 11 years. I know. And then, what do you think of Instagram and the impact that's had on travel and user generated content? As you say, countries and tourist boards used to be in control. Not anymore.
And I mean, the complexity now of understanding what a marketing strategy and who are your customers and how do you connect with them. It's very different than publishing and getting involved in your old traditional travel wholesaler brochure. And that was the Bible that went out. And then the rest of it was, Lonely Planet, a Lonely Planet guide, and the research that you did online. And apart from that, that was it.
And now we've
fingertips.
It's and then with the I guess the edge of VR and AR and everything else is going to come. Give it 5 years, who knows what we will be talking about.
I think we'll see a different way of that, because I think what we'll be talking about is how do we reduce a lot of the mass market impact upon spaces. So I think a lot of it is actually going to look to AR and VR, and I'm really eager to see that managing to find a way that we still immerse people and engage them in an authentic experience, which I think is going to be it's going to be an exciting era. But I think we've had probably the largest part of change. I think the rest of going forward is going to be managing the enthusiasm, protecting sensibly a lot of our spaces so that we can make sure that they are preserved, conserved and interpreted for future generations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that I'm very passionate about as well.
And such an important job now. You're actually right. Right now, that's probably one of the most important things we have to do, because without that, who knows what will be left in 10, 20, 50 years. Incredible.
Exactly.
Amazing. So thank you very much for your time today. I enjoyed myself too much, learning a lot about tourism in Tasmania. One thing I'm going to ask, and don't laugh too much, and I've been in Australia, but not in Tasmania, so that I've been that direction. But tell me about the Tasmanian devil.
Yes, our little Tasmanian devil. Yes, it's a little ripper, being the cartoons that go around the world of fierce little whirring creature. They're not too far from the truth. They're a fierce little creature, and obviously been fighting a huge battle for their survival as well, with a facial tumour disease, which has been researched. But we have now some protected pockets of population that we hope are going to help for us to understand. But you don't ever want to cross the little Tasmanian devil, let me tell you.
Wow, I didn't know.
However you will.
Amazing. So someday I'll see them in the distance, but as you say, I'll not get in their way. So great to know. So again, thank you very much. So if anyone wanted to reach out to find out more about the services you offer, or just to get in touch and talk tourism, what's the best way for them to do that?
Reach out to me through LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. So Jude Franks, LinkedIn, that'll tell you all about me and have my contact details. And I'd love to talk to people. My mission, I suppose, continually is to continue making a difference here in my home state. But I'm ready to look to work more broadly again. So that would be great.
Amazing. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And what we'll do is we make sure anyone that's watching this video or listening to this in a podcast, if they're on a webpage, just look below and you'll find a live link through the Jude's LinkedIn. So Jude, thank you very much again. I appreciate that.
It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Amazing. Excellent. And thank you for watching. A great conversation as ever. So do check out Jude and engage on LinkedIn. And hopefully you learned a lot. I did. And we'll see you in tomorrow's video. So thanks again.